morning, everybody. Now, the topic, I just felt like going a little bit back again to creation evolution, which is my hobby horse, as you know. The God of the dinosaurs. People will ask you, what about the dinosaurs? Now, if I ask you the question here, I know I'm going to get a good answer. But maybe there'll be some that gives me the wrong answer. Now, let me put it this way. What do people say? Generally, if you ask the people, when did the dinosaurs live? What do you get? 65 million years. I've got 65 million years here. Fantastic. That's what I want to talk about today. The Australian Museum is a fascinating place. I've been there quite a few times, and they had a very good exhibition, actually. They had a wonderful exhibition some years ago on dinosaurs. Anyway, the question, firstly, did the dinosaurs exist? The answer is very simple. You all know that building, don't you? There in William Street. I think it's number 1 William Street. Yeah, okay. And the kids, the school kids go there, and they're all being taught and instructed. You see the dinosaurs, that's one. Okay. So did the dinosaurs exist? The answer is absolutely straightforward. Yes, clearly they did, because we find their fossils. It's that simple. That simple indeed. Dinosaurs fossils actually have been found on every continent, and what is fascinating, including well inside the Arctic Circle of Antarctica. And that means that at one time, this planet must have had a global condition that allowed these large forms of life, and not all of them were large, I'll come back to that. But to accommodate them, it would have had the requirement of tremendous growth, and it had globally, including the Arctic circles. Fascinating. I'll come back to that a little bit. The question, don't they look awful? Blimey. When were the dinosaurs? Now, I already asked that question. Between 230 and 65 million years ago, long before humans. Because we've only, according to evolutionary thinking, we have only been around since 200,000 years. So I've got to go back to the last dinosaurs. I multiply that distance of time by 300, and then I come somewhere around about the 60, 65 million years ago. In other words, on the evolutionary scale, we are far apart. That's my point. No, that's their point. Okay. Now, where about all of this is the evidence? There. Nowhere. I remember we went to the Jenolan caves once, and there was this guide, and he had a group, and he said, how many of you were at the cave across the road yesterday? And quite a few put their hands up. And then he said, do you remember how old that cave is? And someone said, yep, they put their hands up, 300 million years. And he said, now, I want you to know that this cave where you are standing is 250 million years old itself. And some smart aleck, do you have any evidence to that effect? And he looked at me, and he said, I know all about creation, 6-day creation, and what have you, in the 6,000-year Earth. Then he turned to the group, and he said, we believe this one is 250 million years old. We believe. Now, that's a different story. That's a different story. In fact, the evidence that the cave could only be thousands of years old, I told him after, is all around you. Stalagmites and all the other inside structures indicated that. Anyway, that's another story. Question. Here's a question. When was the first dinosaur born? Well, the answer will come like this from the Institute of the Australian Museum. About 230 million years ago. I have a question. Who gave birth, what gave birth to the first dinosaur? And who fathered this dinosaur? Are you with me here? Can you see the dilemma? And people step over it like dirty laundry, but this is the reality. Well, they do, and it's not good. Plenty of eggs have been found. Dinosaurs laid eggs, and then the eggs are about, in various sizes, depends which one it is, about the average is about this size. It's amazing. It is amazing that it will grow in an animal weighing 40, 50, 60, even incredibly 100 tons. And it is recognized in the scientific world that this has taken hundreds of years. There's something remarkable about a reptile. If you go to a crocodile farm, how do you pick the oldest crocodile?
The biggest one.
The biggest one. Reptiles have a different bone structure and provisions for growth that we have, and they continue to grow. So, given them more time, they would keep growing and growing and growing within a genetic capacity, but they would keep growing. And so that would have taken hundreds of years. Hundreds of years. And if you consider the fact that we believe that early man lived for hundreds and hundreds of years, the dinosaurs have a confirmation of that, which is rather interesting. And so, let's have a look at this. As another bunch of eggs. Question: what happened to the dinosaurs? Because they appear to have been extinct for a long time. What happened to them? Here are some of the things. The cause of extinction, and this is you would get that from the Australian Museum or any other institution. The cause of the extinction likely due to an asteroid impact. Is there any evidence anywhere? No. But that's the likely cause. They call it likely. It can cause tremendous upheavals in the climate. Choking chemicals from erupting volcanoes. Well, no evidence, yeah. Climate change. I thought that climate change was our fault. And we weren't around. We were around only 200,000 years ago. Climate change? And if that affected the dinosaurs, and they come in this size, no bigger than an average, a reasonable turkey, little pony to massive forms of life. There's so many, there's about 700 different ones that I recognize for the moment. Okay. It's interesting, if it eliminated the dinosaurs, why did it not eliminate the mammoth, rhinoceros, and all the other animals? Why did it single out the dinosaurs? There is no reasonable explanation for that, would there be? I'm just doing this morning to give you some, what shall I say, ammunition, if you like, if that's the word, but some reasoning why that which has been accepted now is absolutely questionable, to say the least. Gary Larson, I think, had the right diagnosis. They picked up smoking. That's what killed them. I'm sure of it. What about the other animals? Well, they didn't pick up smoking. It must have been only the dinosaurs. Okay. These one, Pterodactyl and Pteranodon, they are the two main flying dinosaurs that survived according to evolutionary thinking. And the reason why it survived is because the dinosaurs turned into birds, according to evolutionary thinking. I want you to and I don't know what, these are just artist impressions, you understand. Please don't take them serious. We don't really know much about the skin. There is some information we have, and maybe even the shape sometimes can be questioned. Did dinosaurs turn into birds? Well, you have a number of problems. The man by the name of Thomas Huxley, does anybody know who Thomas Huxley was? Charles Darwin's bulldog. Charles Darwin wrote that book, The Origin of the Species and the Descent of Man. Remember that? Did you know he finished his manuscript in 1844? 1844, isn't that interesting? Can you see behind the scenes? Play and counterplay. It took 15 years before he published it. Never expected it to be the roaring success which it became, but it was a man like Thomas Huxley who kept pushing him. And Thomas Huxley was the first who came up with the idea about the birds. And that was in the mid-1800s, in the middle of the 19th century. Not before it was ever postulated. That birds evolve from dinosaurs. Let me give you a few problems with that. You go from a bird, a warm-blooded animal, to a reptile which is cold-blooded. They virtually all still are cold-blooded. The other thing that you have is an enormous, and I shouldn't use the red color because it doesn't really show well, the avian versus the reptile lungs. You see, all birds have avian systems, lung systems. It is completely different from ours. It's completely different from the reptiles or any of the mammals. It is completely different. It is absolutely designed to supply such a high oxygen level continuously, even if they have their inspiration, expiration. It is absolutely fascinating how it works with a bird because their metabolism is so exceptionally high, particularly on flights, continued flights. The difference is enormous. That's besides the fact that to lift a dinosaur from the earth would be a lot more challenging than a bird. You need hollow bones, and that's the structure that obviously by and large the birds do have. Now, a little bit technical here. Initial life, according to the evolutionary model, begins with a single biological cell. It is not disputed, it's not explained where it comes from. When I had my discussions with the atheists there on Macquarie Uni, I asked them to explain to me how that cell got here. And they say, we don't start from that, we start from the development that came afterwards. Because that is about 90% of the hurdle that you have to overcome if you want to believe in evolution. And the other 10% are not means either. They're really hard to, in fact, impossible to explain. So it says they believe that organic life started with a single biological cell. How it got here, even Richard Dawkins candidly admits, we don't know. And that's a bad start. And so he says, they say they don't know, and let's just step over that. And then we get more than just a speciation, we get a development of different kinds. And there's a huge difference between species and kinds. You see, the different many hundreds of types of dogs, and hundreds of types of cats, about 500 alone types of ducks, if you're interested. It's amazing. They're all species, but they're all ducks, they're all cats, they're all dogs, because they have the same chromosome count. Yeah? But there's a variation within a sort. But this is really crossing the boundaries. This is what's called a macroevolution, where you cross the boundaries and plants turn into animals, and animals turn into a variety of different animals that are completely, totally different and can't interact or breed. The prototype submission by the creationist view is more logical as to what we observe today. Because the creationist says that God created in kind, to their kind. The Hebrew word for kind is min, which means coming from. It is from, do you understand? An ape can only make an ape. A dog can only produce a dog, you understand? And a dinosaur can only produce a dinosaur, not a bird. And so, that is the different view. And we're looking at the same evidence. The only problem is from creation to now, we adopt a time frame, realistic time frame of about 6,000 years, whereas you need for the initial organic life from the evolutionary cycle, you're looking for billions of years, and the average estimate, which may vary, is about 2 billion years. That's a long, long time. A long time. There's no evidence for it anywhere. Then there's a difficult word I have to throw to you, a genetic entropy. Entropy really means this. It really means a turning towards or a transformation. Now, you'll have to excuse me as I go through it. A thermodynamic quantity representing the unavailability of a system's thermal energy for conversion into mechanical works. And I'll just keep making it a bit more difficult. Often interpreted as a degree of disorder of randoms in the system. In other words, there is not a facility to promote, to continue a development of a type or sort or species that you need in order to derive at that species. It really is an underpinning of the second law of thermodynamics. And I know you're going to say to me, why don't you give a sermon? Why do you do this? I'm just throwing a few things at you. That this is accepted by science. This is a concept that was introduced by science. The second law of thermodynamics that says that entropy always increases with time. Basically what it says is this, that because of the lack of order or predictability, gradual decline into disorder is really a consequence of time. Anything that is complex will go to simple. It decays, you understand? So you need, this is a realistic observation of science today, fully accepted. So you really need the reverse of this in order to derive from simple to complex. Are you with me? The Bible introduces the principle of complex, which then ultimately, according to the second law of thermodynamics, does deteriorate. Scientifically, the creation account plays ball. It is in harmony. There's no question about it. And so, that word was used to describe the measurement of disorder that occurs over time by the German physicist there of Rudolf Clausius. Okay. Day 5. Let's get back to serious things. The birds and the fish. Many different sorts of birds. They were created on day 5. And here, of course, here we have and I must go back to this, we have, of course, that question that is answered only by the Bible. What came first, the chicken or the egg? The chicken came first. You got that? Okay. So, the order of land animals to birds in evolutionary thinking is opposite to the order that we know from creationism. Okay. Day 6. So God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature according to its kind, cattle and creeping thing. That word cattle, I wonder if you could remember that. Cattle and creeping things and beasts of the earth and according to its kind. That word min is the qualification. It doesn't mean species. It has been translated like that, but that's not correct. Okay, that's what it means. Now, day 6 is obviously the day that the dinosaurs were created. But not perhaps in the mutated forms that we have got to know them from the fossil records. Here is the golden question. Did man coexist with the dinosaur? Now, according to evolutionary thinking, no Homo sapiens, that is this man, has only been around for about 200,000 years, and that is completely wrong. I'm not just saying it's wrong that man has been around of 200,000 years. In fact, geneticists, many adopt the belief that the human genome may not actually have a capacity to go beyond 100,000 years. But let's say we were wrong about that. We have 200,000 years. What is so wrong is that we didn't coexist with the dinosaurs. That's clearly a furphy, not true. Now, this is not a snapshot of a reality, you understand, it's just an impression. But before the fossil records, which we only have taken notice of the last 200 years, if that, man did coexist with dinosaurs. They actually did. There is no question about it, because the evidence is all there. Noah built an ark. What was the purpose of the ark? For the survival of living organic matter, animated organic matter, such as the animals that all got into the ark. How many of each kind? 2. But of the clean ones? Okay. And of every living thing, that includes the dinosaurs, you shall bring 2 of every sort into the ark. You with me? So they went into the ark. Now, when we, as I said, think in terms of dinosaurs, we think of these massive forms of life. We don't know. Noah might have taken on board just a small size. Could be. Because it is of every kind. It is of every sort. Not every species. Do you understand? I truly believe that God left the bigger forms of dinosaurs outside the ark. The other thing is, they could not have survived the new, well, the surface that was so radically changed. We have a completely different topography after the flood. But they were all safe in the ark, including specimens of the dinosaur. Here is my question to you. This is of Bishop Bell's tomb at Carlisle, at the cathedral in north of England. He was interred there in 1491, so let's say almost 1500. Nobody had taken any notice of any fossils. My question to you is, where do they get those shapes from? Have a look at that. Clearly, the engravings are recognized as depicting the 2 sauropods, and they are the biggest, they're just about the biggest of the herbivores. Herbivores only eat plants, grass, and all the other things. One of the largest herbivores, they could measure up to 80, 90 to 100 ton. Here's another one, cave painting of the similar animal. How would we know? This is ancient. Long before we ever had any diggings, any interest in any fossils, how did we know, how did they know the size and the shape of the dinosaurs? A little birdie told them so? No, that could have only been passed on from human to human. They may not have lived simultaneously, but they knew the account of the massive forms of life. Do you understand? Are you with me here? There is your clearest evidence that the time scale of evolutionary thinking of the last dinosaur 65 million years ago and man having been on the planet only for 200,000 years is completely wrong. Where would we get the information? We didn't get it from the apes. Do you understand what I just said to you? It is completely incompatible. Here is another one. I could fill all day with pictures like that. You find it in pottery vases. You find it on this cave, that's very interesting. There are carvings and paintings in caves all around the world of dinosaurs. There's so many of them, too many to mention. Here is the Inca ceremonial burial stones. Have a look at that. You clearly see that Tyrannosaurus rex there, he's very ferocious looking. And they are believed to be from the Nazca culture, that I'm not familiar with. But 1,100 of them were found, most of them depicting the dinosaurs. I think that's quite amazing. There are actually, these are ancient carvings. They were made long before ever a fossil was recognized as being a fossil or had any interest to mankind. But they were making these things, and I'll just show you a few more. Can you see that there was a knowledge, there was an awareness of these forms of life roaming this planet? Get it? Meaning that they must have coexisted beyond any reasonable doubt. The scientific evidence. Some of you are looking a bit sleepy. Fight it, okay? Soft tissue. This is some good stuff coming up. Her name is Dr. Mary Schweitzer. She's not a Christian. She's not a creationist. I think she's even an evolutionist. I'm not sure. She's a paleontologist that I know from the North Carolina State University, and she upset the whole evolutionary world because what she did find and published, she discovered the remains of blood cells in dinosaur fossils. Well, that would indicate that we're only talking thousands of years. No way are we talking millions of years. That was very upsetting. She was very ferociously discredited, but they had to concede when the evidence was presented. They discovered the remains of blood cells in dinosaurs fossils. And later discovered soft tissue remains in the Tyrannosaurus rex specimen, which indicates it could only be thousands of years old. And then there was a tacit admission, and I got it actually from Wikipedia because it was conceded by the evolutionists. Evidence for the extraction of short segments of ancient DNA. DNA is a very unstable, well, not unstable, it is a short, relatively short-lived molecule. Of course, we all have it. From dinosaurs fossils have been reported on 2 separate occasions, that was then. The extraction of protein, soft tissue, remnant cells, organella. Organella are really like little factories within a biological cell. Organella-like structures from dinosaurs fossils have been confirmed. In fact, you can take it even further today. Absolutely. This is an interesting one. A man by the name of Hugh Miller found some bones of the fossils of the dinosaurs. And he took it to a department of the geoscience at the University of Tuscan for carbon-14. We're going to talk a bit about carbon-14 dating. One fragment from an unidentified dinosaur, the other from the one down near the Allosaurus, which is the picture down there. That's what he looked like, excavated by James Hall, a geologist, near Grand Junction, Colorado. Have a look at this. Miller submitted the samples. He did not disclose what they were, where he got them from, but this is the interesting result. A carbon-14 analysis indicated that the bones were 10 to 16,000 years old. A far cry from the proposed 65 million years extinction. The realities are different. The evidence is there. Why don't they accept it? That's my point. Now, so numerous examples of soft tissues finds, including ligament, flesh, blood cells, etc., and even skin from a hadrosaurus. And that's him down there, one of those. They look a bit alike. These are skin samples, the one on your left, they're skin samples. It's quite interesting that they found them. Skin surviving 65 million years? I don't think so. I don't think so. Carbon-14 testing. Are you up to it? A little bit longer. You're all okay? Because don't you get sick all the time that evolution is a fact? And it isn't. No, it's not really stupid. I mean, if you take God out of the equation, you have no option. Evolution is your only escape, because we're here. You understand? Never call them stupid. Let them call you stupid. Well, it doesn't make sense. That's another one. Okay, carbon-14 testing. Now, a half-life of 5,730. A half-life is a bit like this. Suppose I have a cake, a nice big cake. I wouldn't mind one. I have a nice big cake. It's not my birthday, but I'll accept it. So I have a cake, and I halve the cake, yeah? Okay, that's half a cake. Then I go to the other half, and I halve it again. That's a quarter, you understand? And then I halve it again. I have 1/8, and I can go on and on and on. So with a half-life of, if you take a quantity there of carbon-14 and I measure them, I can, in 5,730 odd years, I get half of the presence of the carbon-14. I wait another 5,730 years, I get half again. You understand what I'm saying? Are you? Good, okay. So, it's a way of measuring. If you don't understand it, see me afterwards. No detectable carbon-14 in anything older than 60,000 years is still a fact today. So if it's older than 60,000 years, you cannot date it. And by the way, carbon-14 is only in organic matter. Whenever somebody tells you that they have radiometrically dated the rocks by way of carbon-14 to billions of years, they know nothing about their physics, because it's impossible. Carbon-14 is only for organic matter, and it doesn't get a reading beyond 60,000 years. Now, this is interesting. Not millions of years. Now, carbon-14, I'll just explain it a little bit. The Bible postulates a fantastic condition. And the fantastic condition of this planet was that we had a canopy. Now, you can't really see it too well. That's here in red. And as I said, it's not a real good, sorry about that, I should have made it a different color. And there you have like a swaddling cloth of water vapor. Remember on day 2, the water was separated from the water. Yeah? Remember me ever giving a lecture on that? Okay. So we have a tremendous water vapor layer surrounding the planet, which is the only explanation why you find these fossils of the dinosaurs within the Arctic circles, because there was enough grazing. That's interesting. So carbon-14 dating, ideal greenhouse conditions, exuberant growth, globally, and for 1656 years, because from creation to the flood itself, when it started, was 1656 years. And then the whole ecology of this planet was changed in the Great Flood and the collapse, of course, of the water vapor layer. Now, I won't go too much into it, but it has to do with this. Cosmic radiation affects nitrogen-14, which turns then actually in carbon-14. Nitrogen-14, if you're interested, loses a neutron, gains a proton, same atomic count, but it just becomes carbon-14. Carbon-14 connects itself with oxygen. It is taken in by all plants. Anything that's green on the Earth, including the oceans that have the algae, the carbon-14 is absorbed in photosynthesis. And so the animals eat it, we even breathe it in. We may eat the animal or we eat the vegetables. Whichever way, we all take in carbon-14. Did everybody follow that so far? We all take in carbon-14. Then once we are buried, once we die, we pass away, or any of the animals, organic matter, animated, is buried, then clearly there is no new intake of carbon-14, because you don't breathe anymore and you don't eat anymore. Yeah? If you don't believe me, see me afterwards. And so what happens is the carbon-14 that is stored in your body is going to return to carbon-nitrogen, the ordinary nitrogen, nitrogen-14. And so you can do that reading of the half-lives. And that gives you an idea, I say an idea, how old it is. That is assuming that the carbon-14 concentration always has been the same. And that absolutely would not have been the case. The water vapor layer, as projected by the Bible, would have protected our atmosphere from the cosmic radiation, at least far more than we are protected now by our atmosphere. That would mean lower levels of carbon-14, far, far lower. And that can give you a false reading. The canopy was global, and of course so was the flood, because it collapsed. And that's just another picture of showing you about the mechanics of, and sometimes, I know you think to yourself, this is technical. Sometimes you have to make the effort to understand. Because don't you get sick of those people that keep telling you that evolution is a fact? And come up with these claims that are absolutely, completely untrue. You see, if I take that fish that died, and I've got that from Creation Science, this little sketch, we don't know the levels of carbon-14. We do understand the current levels of carbon-14, and we do understand the half-life, but we can't work out from there, how old that fish is precisely. Do you understand? Because we start from a lower carbon-14 level. Everybody follow that? Am I wearing you out? I decided to do something very different today. This is important. So the question is this. What did they feed on? Well, most of them, the bigger sizes were herbivores. They ate no doubt grass, plants, etc. The bigger ones, the four-legged ones, the massive sizes, and there is a whole collection of them down here. The vast array of dinosaurs with a huge appetite would have been appropriate in the pre-flood era. considering the abundant vegetation that evidently existed in that time. And the evidence is all around us. I'll come back to that. Book of Job. Book of Job. Book of Job. There's a verse there. You might be familiar with it. In Job 40, God is talking to Job. He says, now look at the behemoth. Now behemoth in Hebrew is the plural. Behemoth is the plural of behemah, which means cattle. I ask you to remember the word cattle. It is a very wide application. Now look at the behemoth, which I made along with you. On what day did God create the cattle? When did he create man? The book of Job affirms that. He believed that. He eats grass like an ox. I want you to see a few more verses here. His strength is in his hips. When you look at those big sizes that we just talked about, his power is in his stomach muscles, because when you are vegetarian, you actually need a bigger stomach to get the same calories intake. You understand? So if you put on weight as a vegetarian, you've got an excuse. Now, see his strength in his hips and his power in his stomach muscles. Me too, it's all muscle. He moves his tail like a cedar. What's a cedar? Ever seen a cedar? It's massive. And they used to be bigger than now. So some people have said, oh, behemoth, that must be the Hebrew word for a hippopotamus. Have you ever seen the tail of a hippopotamus? It's very different, isn't it? It's not. Others have said it's an elephant. Same problem as the elephant. It's only a little brush. Some of them have even said, must be a crocodile. When did you see a crocodile eat grass the last time? So you understand. So that's not the right. There is an indication that there may be the dinosaurs described in the book of Job. Coal. Coal is a fossil vegetation matter. All coal is vegetation matter. You understand that? And it's fossilized. It's fossilized. Black-brown sedimentary rock formed by heat and pressure. All coal contains measurable amounts of carbon-14. It can only be thousands of years old. Do you understand? It got buried suddenly. And if you go all around the globe and see the consistency of the carbon-14 levels, it's absolutely amazing. Today there are about here, I'll just annoy you a little bit longer, 39 trillion tons of carbon in the biosphere. That is on top of this planet. Compare that to around 6,800, and don't know how they quite get that number, but 6,820 trillion metric tons of carbon that is buried as coal. Which means this, that if all the carbon found in the geological column that is underground was buried in the universal flood at the time of Noah, then all the carbon in the forms of fossils, coal and oil are complex hydrocarbons, must have been part of the living world of one time. What I'm trying to say, what is in the ground buried there that used to be vegetation, got buried catastrophically, and the quantity of what is buried compared to what is above the ground is about 170 to 1. That's incredible. That's incredible, indicating that everything must have been living at the same time, looking at the numbers, at least 174 times the living matter before the flood on top of this planet, which means there was plenty of food to sustain the large forms of life, namely these dinosaurs that we find the fossils of. They could not, in any way at all, they could not possibly live today. They wouldn't survive, not the big sizes. So the world must have been richer in animals, plants, trees, fish, algae before the global flood. You know, everything that I've mentioned, I know it's different from a normal sermon, all the evidence that we can observe is in complete harmony with the biblical account of an antediluvian world that had a massive sustaining growth for all the large forms of life. The evidence is absolutely there. And why I'm telling you this, we're just about at the end, is this. Ever wonder what the new world will look like? Do you? You should. You go to Genesis 1, Genesis 2, and you can almost see and envision a picture of what a new world, the world restored, is going to look like. What did God say at day 6? God saw that it was good. God saw that it is what? Very good. It was perfect. We go back to a perfect world. We go to a world where there is growth, there is an exuberance of flora and fauna that we can't even imagine today. This is why it fascinates me. Truth hurts if you are on the wrong side of truth. Whether 9% or 99% of the population accepts evolution is actually irrelevant because truth is not a democracy. Truth is not negotiable. It's not relative because it's no longer truth. And that's true. Do you understand what I just said? Okay. Imagine you find a, what shall I say, sample of, what would you call this stuff? They found them, what, yeah. No. Yeah. Okay, it comes from the trees and it engulfs the actual, huh? Ember. This is an ember dry that contains a microchip. Would you believe that that was possible? That you'd find that in nature? Not likely. Why? Because that is a design. That has only been around for the last few decades. That has not been around with some of the ember samples. They have found very old specimens, like this one. That is an insect. Now, if you compare the chip to the insect, which one is harder to produce? Clearly, there's no comparison. Now, we accept design from the computer chip. Why can't we accept design from that? Because that would make sense. Things that are known, I have a little question before I close. There are things known, there are things unknown. And in between are our perceptions. Did that penny drop? Because that's important. Yeah? We see what we see. We know what we know, and there's things that we don't know, and in between are our perceptions. Here, what do you see? I want to know. What do you see? Hourglass. And two joining faces. What would you see now? What would you say? Clearly an hourglass. Not an hourglass, a goblet. It's all in the perception of what you see. And so it is true. If your perception of your origin is not correct, how can your perception of where you're going to be correct? Do you understand? Does that make sense to you? See how important it is, where we're from. And to me, this is even more important. Why scientists accept evolution? Well, evolution, they wrote, is taken for granted today, and thus it is uncritically accepted by scientists and as well as by laymen. It is accepted by them today because it was already accepted by others who went before them and under whose directions they obtained their education. If you were educated in this, then people believe in evolution because they have been taught. Now, that is how people come to evolution. Because really it is not the end result of a scientific consideration. Henry and Morris wrote this book on Genesis, fantastic, still a classic. The main reason for educated people believe in evolution is simply that they have been told that most educated people believe in evolution, and you want to be known as being educated. Isn't that true? That's true, that's true. Chuck Missler, an evangelist and an apologist, very good. The only barrier to truth is the presumption that you already have it. Get it? The presumption that you already have it. Professor Watson held the chair of evolution at the University of London for 20 years. 20 years he said this. He said, evolution itself is accepted by zoologists and of course all the others, not because that it has been observed to occur or can be proven by logically coherent evidence it to be true. In other words, he says we have absolutely no evidence. It makes no sense. But because the alternative is special creation. Oh, that is too incredible. He didn't want to accept that. Unthinkable in his mind. Bible says, for by him all things were created, that are in heaven, that are on the earth. And the passion that he holds for this planet, the love that he invests in every one of us, can only be explained because he is the creator. And that's it. The passion of Christ is only there because in the beginning was God. So, greater love has no one than this, that one lays down one's life for his friends. The love that he holds for us, to me, is the ultimate proof and evidence of the act of creation. How can you love something if it didn't come from your hands? It's worthy of a thought. May God bless you.